I'm Luke Kerfuffle, and what becomes of our story when we're no longer allowed to tell it? What do we leave behind, and how does that define us to those left to scavenge the remnants of our existence? Deltarune is a story very interested in this subject, and it has a lot to say about it, though not yet directly. Hidden perfectly out of view is a story of grief and remembrance happening concurrent to the plot we witness. A story told almost entirely through the game's three primary lyrical melodies. Don't forget the hymn and Raise Up Your Bat. Right before Chapter 3's rhythm minigame featuring Raise Up Your Bat, Tenna talks about December Holiday. He's the first character outside of Dess's immediate family to mention her name, and the first mention of Dess the player isn't allowed to miss, thanks to Snowgrave. He mentions how Dess would come over and bypass his parental controls to watch inappropriate music videos, rocking out and singing along. Tenna's words here, alongside the fact that Dess was clearly musically inclined as we see from her bedroom, has led to the theory that Dess herself wrote Raise Up Your Bat. But what that theory forgets is that the song already exists in-universe. In the Spamton Sweepstakes event hidden throughout the many web pages are links to Holiday Girl 1225's Game Secrets, Glitches, and Theories blog, with posts seemingly written by Noelle Holiday. In the first page, the one which hints to all the others, she ends it with the status sharing her mood is curious and that she's listening to Bloodcrushers the band Raise Up Your Bat. Bloodcrushers, similar to Cat Petters and Dragon Blazers, is a media franchise which exists in-universe. First, Bloodcrushers 3 is mentioned by Susie when she and Chris are deciding what movie to watch at the end of Chapter 2. Then, in the beginning of Chapter 3, Susie asks Ralsei if he thinks he could survive Bloodcrushers 2, which Susie references again in Chapter 4, talking about a severed hand, which Noelle immediately clocks as a Bloodcrushers 2 reference. This kicks off a conversation which Susie admits she's never seen the original, only the second, and Noelle suggests they watch it together, saying she used to watch it religiously and that it'd be nice to have someone to watch it with again. So we can deduce Dess was a huge fan of Bloodcrushers, introducing it to her sister and watching it alongside her. That's how Tenna knows the song Raise Up Your Bat, a song created by Bloodcrushers the band, presumably for or about a Bloodcrushers movie. Looking at the lyrics for the chorus, it makes sense that it belonged to a franchise with that name. When the demon heart is crying and the blood is gushing bright, raise up your bat for the burning fight. When your hope is slowly dying and your future's lost its rights, raise up your bat and face the fright. Let's knock 'em dead into the night. But it's the bridge of the song that's really shocking and provides a huge connection I've yet to see anyone make. See, this understanding of the song actually gives us a diegetic origin for the Lost Girl melody. This is the motif heavily connected with Dess Holiday, the one that goes like this. You'll hear this all over the place in Deltarune, even playing for characters not directly connected to Dess, but the origin of the motif certainly belongs to her. On the Deltarune website, the page deltarune.com/Dess shows a sprite of her guitar, which upon clicking plays the entirety of a rendition of Lost Girl, the melody of which is directly shared by the bridge of Raise Up Your Bat. So even though Lost Girl came first for us, the player, Raise Up Your Bat existed long before the events of Deltarune, which is quite an interesting revelation because those lyrics feel very apt to the events and themes of Deltarune and its prophecy. So how could they be completely unrelated? Well, I don't think they are. I think that just like Dragon Blazers and Lord of the Hammer, its creators took inspiration from the prophecy. Let's take a closer look at that bridge. Come follow me into the dark with your heart as the arc which shall shine you the way. Because I'm with you in the dark with your heart as my mark which shall guide you the way through the waves. These lyrics are far too fitting to be just a coincidence. In Chapter 4, we learn from Gerson that his book series, Lord of the Hammer, was heavily inspired by the prophecy, and so too were the Dragon Blazers video games, which took inspiration from his books. Upon being asked about this, Gerson says, "And so they changed parts of the story. Of course, the biggest fans got mad, but isn't it interesting? The book was already just an interpretation of something else. Stories can be retold, they can be changed. That's what I believe." I think that sentiment is similar to what's happening with Bloodcrushers, and as such, Raise Up Your Bat. And I think that's why Don't Forget has so many similarities to it. Don't Forget is, for all intents and purposes, the theme song of Deltarune, playing for the first time upon completing a playthrough of Chapter 1. Its motifs and melodies hidden all throughout the score. The in-universe writer and singer of this song is a hotly contested subject, but for me and many others, there's only ever been one answer: Dess. I believe Dess wrote Don't Forget, and in doing so, she took inspiration from Raise Up Your Bat, but also another song. In Ohmtown's church, we hear the choir sing the hymn, a song which shares musical elements with Don't Forget, specifically the melody of its titular line.
Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark.
This means that Des combined a line from Raise Up Your Bat with the melody of the hymn, a creative choice which is extremely telling. From what we know about Des, I don't think she'd be attending church of her own volition. She wouldn't care enough about those hymns to take any inspiration from them, except for the fact that the person she cared about more than anything did. Noelle. Noelle has been a member of the church's choir for years, and it's a role that clearly means a lot to her. I'm certain Des, who is such a big fan of music herself, would have encouraged Noelle to sing even if it was in a religious context, and I'm sure they would have practiced together. Des, seemingly more than anything, wanted to see Noelle happy. In the Chapter 2 Dark World, during the scene where Noelle and Chris have to spell out the word December to proceed, Noelle talks about how Des said she'd take her somewhere like this someday, somewhere with shining lights. The dynamics between members of the Holiday family are complicated at best. From what we see of Carol's relationship with Noelle, she seems to have very high expectations for how she's to act and what she can and can't do, all appearing to center around Carol's own wants and wishes. This is told to us through certain dialogue, but more importantly, through imagery. Taking a close look at Noelle's Dark World form, you'll notice that her hair changes to be the exact same shade as her mother's. Her idealized subconscious version of herself brought to life by the Dark World's magic is a miniature version of her mother in a pristine white robe. While I'm certain Carol's treatment of Noelle was amplified by Des's disappearance, it's clearly been going on for quite some time. Rudy tells a story of how baby Noelle made paper snowflakes for Carol to hang at work, but Carol instead had them preserved and hung at home to keep them safe. This made Noelle cry, but those snowflakes are still there to this day, frozen in time. The only thing that made Noelle feel better in that moment was making snow angels with Des, Asriel, and Chris. To me, this anecdote is the perfect microcosm of the Holiday family's dynamics, especially pre-Des's disappearance. When Noelle cried, it wasn't Carol that changed her own behavior or Rudy that stepped in to mediate. It was Des who took the responsibility to care for her sister, gathering their friends and cheering her up. Even the visual language of the holidays fits this dichotomy, the way they use the cheery exterior of Christmas to mask their internal struggles. You'll notice the only member who fully rejected this facade was Des, her door starkly painted black against the sterile white of the holiday home. Des, it seems, placed a lot of pressure on herself to be there for Noelle, knowing no one else really would. In fact, I think this is the origin of Don't Forget. It's a song Des wrote for Noelle, the embodiment of a promise between two sisters, Des's promise to be there for her. That final line, "Don't forget I'm with you in the dark," combines a lyric from Raise Up Your Bat with the melody of the hymn, a piece of Des and a piece of Noelle. Don't Forget is a song by and about both Des and Noelle. Lost Girl occupies a similar space, its title not just referring to Des literally, but also Noelle figuratively. Noelle feels lost without her sister, because so much of who she is comes from her. The movies she likes, the music she listens to, her fascination with cryptids, I believe even her blog, literally titled Holiday Girl 1225, was passed down to her by Des. Noelle clearly looked up to her, just like Chris did. She embodied everything they wanted, complete confidence and assuredness in one's own identity. But it doesn't seem Des herself ever truly felt that. I think a part of the tragedy of Des's character is that she was lost before she could even find herself. On the Deltarune website, if you try to visit deltarune.com/December, you get a message saying the page cannot be found. You have to use Des to get to the guitar and its cover of Lost Girl. Noelle also never refers to Des as December. Her name is always Des. One of my favorite theories, December Holiday is Not Who You Think She Is by Soya Desu, Soya proposes that the text which interrupts the character creator is a memory of Carol speaking to Des, hence the similar format to when this occurs in Undertale. No one can choose who they are in this world. Your name is December. Des wanted to be her own person, separate from her family. She rejected their cheery exterior all the way down to the very name she was given. She refused to be December. Her true self was Des, but she disappeared before she was allowed to be truly independent. Now her identity lives only in memories. I think it's very intentional that we're only allowed to learn about Des from other characters. All the sources for Des's life are secondary, recounted tales. The girl who fought so hard to rewrite her story is no longer allowed to tell it. But there is one way her authentic self lives on. through music. As we've made clear throughout this analysis, the music of Deltarune tells a narrative in and of itself, and through it we can get as close as possible to an authentic portrayal of Des. We can learn what movies she liked and how they shaped her identity. We can see how much she cared about her sister, how angry she was at their circumstances, and how desperately she craved freedom. In the beginning of this video, I asked the question of what happens to our story when we're no longer allowed to tell it. Deltarune's answer is that it continues to be told by the people and art we loved. Even though it may be imperfect, it's still there. We're still there. Thanks for watching.